Soft Strength, Episode 28, Letting People Learn Without Saving Them. Welcome back, Reasonauts. My name isn't important. The message is, every day is awesome. We just have to get through it. And before we begin, if these conversations have been meaningful to you, subscribe and stay with us each week. Share this episode with someone who may need it. And join us on Facebook, not for noise, not for attention, just a place where people learning to grow do not have to do it alone. Last week, we talked about what happens when you become the calm one in chaos, about the way a room can feel you before it hears you, about how peace can comfort some people and challenge others, about becoming steady without becoming everyone's shelter, about influence without ownership, and about the quiet responsibility of what remains after you leave. But once people begin trusting your steadiness, another temptation appears. You may begin believing you have to save them. You may begin thinking that because you can see the pattern, you must prevent every consequence. You may begin carrying what was never yours in the name of love. So today, we are going to talk about the difference between helping someone and saving someone, the difference between support and rescue, the difference between compassion and carrying a life that does not belong to you. Because letting people learn does not mean you stop loving them. It means you stop stealing the weight that was meant to teach them how to stand. There is a kind of pain that comes from watching someone you care about move towards something you can already see. You see the pattern, you hear the tone, you notice the decision forming, you can almost feel the consequence coming. And something inside you wants to step in, not later, now, before it gets worse, before they make the mistake, before they hurt themselves, before they hurt someone else, before the same cycle repeats again. And sometimes stepping in is right. Sometimes love speaks. Sometimes love warns. Sometimes love protects. Sometimes love intervenes. This conversation is not about becoming passive. It is not about standing there cold while someone falls apart. It is not about saying, that is their problem, and walking away with a hard heart. That is not soft strength. That is distance. And we have already talked about distance. This is about something more difficult. It is about learning when help is actually help and when help has become control. Because helping someone and saving someone are not the same movement. Helping walks beside someone. Saving tries to become their legs. Helping supports movement. Saving replaces responsibility. Helping respects timing. Saving tries to force awakening. Helping says, I will walk with you while you learn. Saving says, I cannot let you feel this because your pain makes me uncomfortable. That difference matters because sometimes what we call love is really our inability to watch someone struggle. Sometimes what we call compassion is really our fear of what might happen if we stop stepping in. Sometimes what we call support is really control, wearing gentle language, and that is hard to admit. Because most of the time, we are not trying to control people. We are trying to protect them. We are trying to prevent damage. We are trying to keep them from hurting. We are trying to stop them from repeating something we already know will cost them. And there is love in that. There can be wisdom in that. But love without humility can slowly become ownership. And wisdom without patience can become pressure. You can be right about what you see and still be wrong in how you move. That sentence matters because aware people can struggle here. When you see clearly, you may feel responsible to act quickly. When you understand the pattern, you may feel responsible to break it. When you know where something is heading, you may feel responsible to stop it. But seeing is not the same thing as owning. Understanding is not the same thing as controlling. And warning someone does not make you responsible for whether they listen. That is a hard truth, especially when the person matters to you, especially when the consequence is real, especially when you can already feel the cost. But every person has their own movement, their own timing, their own lessons, their own readiness, their own relationship with truth. And sometimes the truth you can explain to them in one sentence still has to become real inside their life through experience. That does not mean they are stupid. It does not mean they are hopeless. It does not mean you failed to say it correctly. It means hearing something and becoming changed by it are not always the same thing. We know this because we have lived it. Someone told us, someone warned us, someone probably explained the thing clearly, maybe more than once, and still, we had to walk through it. We had to feel the consequence. We had to see the result. We had to meet the weight of our own movement before the lesson became ours, not borrowed, ours. There are some lessons people cannot borrow from your clarity. They have to earn them through contact, through weight, through consequence, through the moment when the story they were telling themselves finally breaks against reality. And that is painful to watch. But sometimes that weight is the teacher, not punishment, instruction, not cruelty, information, not proof that life is against them. A signal, because consequences carry information. They tell us what a movement produced. They show us what a choice created. They reveal what a pattern is costing. And if you remove every consequence from someone else's life, you may also remove the very information that would have helped them wake up. That is where caring can become caring. It begins with love. It begins with concern. It begins with, I do not want them to hurt. So you step in, you explain, you soften the impact, you clean up the mess, you make the call, you cover the cost, you smooth over the relationship, you absorb the pressure, you protect them from the full weight of what their movement created. And at first, it feels like help. It feels kind. It feels responsible. It feels like what a good person would do. But then it happens again and again and again. The same pattern returns. The same decision repeats. The same crisis arrives wearing different clothes. And somehow you are still standing there, holding the weight. Their lesson becomes your exhaustion. Their consequence becomes your anxiety. Their pattern becomes your schedule. Their refusal becomes your responsibility. And now you are not helping them move. You are helping the pattern survive. That is painful to say. But sometimes the help we keep offering is the very thing making it possible for nothing to change. Because if someone can keep choosing the same movement while someone else keeps absorbing the cost, why would the pattern feel urgent enough to stop? If they never have to feel the weight because you keep catching it, then the lesson keeps landing on you instead of them. And then both people become stuck. They do not become responsible. You do not become free. They keep falling. You keep catching. They keep repeating. You keep resenting. And eventually, love starts turning into a system, not a healthy system. A system where one person keeps creating weight and the other keeps calling it compassion while slowly disappearing underneath it. That is not love at its highest form. That is imbalance. And imbalance, even when it begins with good intentions, still creates distortion. You can love someone deeply and still participate in a distorted pattern with them. You can want the best for someone and still become part of what keeps them from growing. You can be kind and still be over-functioning. You can be generous and still be enabling. You can be loyal and still be carrying something that was never yours to carry. This is why soft strength is so difficult, because it does not let you hide behind being nice. It does not let you call every yes compassion. It does not let you call every rest you love. It asks you to look at the fruit. What is this producing? Is my help creating more responsibility or less? Is my presence helping this person stand or helping them avoid standing? Is my support creating movement or keeping the same pattern comfortable? Is my love freeing both of us or binding us to a role? Neither one of us was meant to live forever. Those questions can hurt because they may reveal that the thing you thought was love has become fear. Fear of being seen as uncaring. Fear of watching someone struggle. Fear of being blamed. Fear of conflict. Fear that if you stop caring, everything will fall apart, and maybe some things will fall apart. That is the part we do not like. Sometimes when you stop caring what was never yours, the structure does shake because it was being held together by your overextension. Sometimes when you stop rescuing, the person becomes angry because they were used to your intervention. Sometimes when you stop absorbing, the pattern becomes visible because your carrying had been hiding it. And sometimes the relationship has to face the truth that it was depending on your self-abandonment more than it was honoring your love. That is not easy, but it is honest. And honest movement is not always painless. Sometimes honest movement hurts because it interrupts something false. But pain does not automatically mean the movement is wrong. Sometimes pain is the feeling of a false structure, losing support. Sometimes discomfort is what happens when responsibility returns to the person it always belonged to. Sometimes anger rises because access changed. Sometimes guilt rises because you are no longer playing the old role, and that is where you have to remain grounded. Not hard, grounded, because you can let someone learn without becoming cold. You can step back without withdrawing love. You can refuse to carry without refusing to care. You can say no without hatred. You can stop saving without abandoning. That is the line, and it is not always easy to find. Some moments will require you to help. Some moments will require you to speak. Some moments will require you to protect. Some moments will require you to stay close. But some moments will require you to let the weight land. Not because you want them punished, because you respect them enough to let their life teach them. That is a different kind of love. It is not soft because it avoids pain. It is soft because the heart stays alive. It is strong because it refuses to become responsible for someone else's refusal to move. There is something in us that wants love to mean prevention. If I love you, I prevent the consequence. If I love you, I prevent the discomfort. If I love you, I prevent the fall. If I love you, I keep you from feeling the full weight of what happened. But sometimes love does not prevent the weight. Sometimes love stays near while the weight teaches. Sometimes love says, I warned you, but I will not become your escape from what you chose. Sometimes love says, I care about you, but I cannot keep paying for a pattern you refuse to examine. Sometimes love says, I will help you recover, but I will not help you repeat. That line matters. I will help you recover, but I will not help you repeat. Because recovery and repetition are not the same movement. Recovery has honesty in it. Repetition has avoidance. Recovery says, I see what happened and I want to move differently. Repetition says, I want relief from the consequence without responsibility for the pattern. And if you treat both of those the same, you may find yourself pouring your energy into something that has no intention of becoming different. That is where discernment matters, not judgment. Discernment. Judgment says, this person is the problem. Discernment asks, what is this movement producing? Judgment closes the heart. Discernment keeps the heart open while still telling the truth. Judgment wants to stand above. Discernment wants to see clearly. And in this season, we are learning how to see clearly without becoming hard. So you can notice the difference. You can notice when someone is struggling, but also trying. You can notice when someone is hurting, but still willing to take responsibility. You can notice when someone needs support because they are moving toward growth and not just looking for someone to remove the weight. And you can also notice when someone wants your compassion, but not accountability. When they want your comfort, but not your truth. When they want your presence, but not your boundary. When they want your steadiness, but not their own responsibility. That does not mean you have to attack them. It means you stop pretending not to see. Because pretending not to see will not make the pattern kinder. It will only make the pattern last longer. And every pattern has a cost. Sometimes the cost is time. Sometimes the cost is peace. Sometimes the cost is trust. Sometimes the cost is health. Sometimes the cost is the warmth you used to feel before resentment started growing in the spaces where honesty was supposed to be. That is why truth has to enter, not as cruelty, not as punishment, not as, I told you so, but as clarity. I love you, but I cannot keep participating in this pattern. I care about you, but I cannot make your choices for you. I will support your growth, but I cannot support your avoidance. I can walk with you, but I cannot become the movement you refuse to make. Those sentences are not easy. They may shake your voice. They may bring guilt with them. They may be misunderstood. They may be called cold. But sometimes the cleanest love you can offer is the love that no longer lies. Because rescue can become a lie. It can say, this is okay when it is not okay. It can say, this is sustainable when it is not sustainable. It can say, I can keep carrying this when your body knows you cannot. It can say, this is helping when the fruit says it is not. And once you see that, you cannot unsee it. You may try. You may tell yourself, just one more time. Maybe this time they will understand. Maybe if I explain it better. Maybe if I give more. Maybe if I am more patient. Maybe if I prove I love them enough, they will finally choose differently. Sometimes they will. Sometimes people wake up. Sometimes support becomes the bridge. They needed to cross into responsibility. And that is beautiful. But sometimes no amount of your explaining, your patience, your presence, your sacrifice, or your love can choose for someone who is not ready to choose. That is not your failure. That is their movement. And they are allowed to have it. That sentence is hard. They are allowed to have their movement, even when you do not like it, even when you would choose differently, even when you can see the cost, even when it breaks your heart. They are allowed to move slower than you hoped. They are allowed to repeat a lesson you thought they already learned. They are allowed to ignore a warning you gave with love. They are allowed to meet the consequence that you wanted to prevent. They are allowed to have a life that does not obey your clarity. That does not mean their movement has no consequences. It means their movement belongs to them, and yours belongs to you. That is where freedom begins, not only for them, for you, because once you stop believing you are responsible for forcing someone else's awakening, you get your life back, you get your breath back, you get your peace back, you get your love back, without resentment wrapped around it. You get to care without becoming consumed. You get to support without becoming swallowed. You get to speak without needing to be obeyed. You get to warn without needing to control the response. You get to love without making your heart responsible for someone else's readiness. That is not easy love, but it is cleaner love. And clean love has room for truth. There is a grief in letting people learn. We should be honest about that, because sometimes people talk about boundaries as if they make everything feel easy. They do not. Sometimes boundaries bring peace and grief at the same time. Peace because you stop betraying yourself. Grief because you wish it did not have to be that way. Peace because the weight is finally back where it belongs. Grief because watching someone carry it still hurts. Peace because your life is no longer organized around rescue. Grief because part of you still wants to run in and soften the fall. That grief does not mean you are wrong. It means you are human. It means your heart is still alive. And that matters, because the goal is not to become so detached that nothing hurts. The goal is to stop letting hurt make every decision. You can ache and still stay clear. You can miss someone and still honor the boundary. You can wish they understood and still stop explaining. You can love them and still let the lesson belong to them. That is soft strength, not numbness, not cruelty, not abandonment, soft strength. The kind that says, my heart can remain open without my life becoming available for every pattern that refuses responsibility. There may be moments where you question yourself. Did I do enough? Did I say enough? Did I leave too soon? Should I have tried one more time? Those questions may come, and sometimes they are worth asking. Because humility still matters, we do not want to become people who use boundaries as an excuse to stop caring. We do not want to become people who abandon others and call it peace. We do not want to become people who mistake discomfort for proof that something is unhealthy. Sometimes love is uncomfortable. Sometimes staying is right. Sometimes helping is right. Sometimes carrying something together for a season is right. So we do not answer these questions with pride. We answer them with honesty. What is the fruit? Is this help creating movement? Is there responsibility on both sides? Is truth welcome here? Is this person trying or only using my steadiness to avoid their own? Am I acting from love or from fear? Am I staying because it is clean or because guilt is driving? Am I leaving because it is wise or because I do not want to feel anything? Those questions keep us human. They keep boundaries from becoming walls. They keep love from becoming control. They keep compassion from becoming self-abandonment. They keep strength from becoming hardness. Because every clean boundary still needs a clean heart, and every clean heart still needs a boundary. That is the balance we are learning. Letting people learn does not mean you stop offering help. It means your help no longer removes their responsibility. You can say, I am here, but not, I will live this for you. You can say, I will listen, but not, I will absorb this forever. You can say, I believe you can grow, but not, I will make growth unnecessary. You can say, I love you, but not, I will abandon myself so you never have to face yourself. That is a different kind of love. A love that believes people are capable, even when they are struggling. A love that respects another person's dignity, enough to stop treating them like they cannot carry truth. A love that refuses to confuse rescue with respect. Because sometimes saving people all the time is not as loving as it appears. Sometimes it quietly says, I do not believe you can handle your own life. I do not believe you can learn from consequence. I do not believe you can stand unless I keep holding you. And maybe that is not the message we want to send. Maybe the deeper love says, I believe your life can teach you. I believe you can become responsible. I believe you can stand, and I will not steal every weight. That might help you discover that. That kind of love is not careless. It still checks in. It still encourages. It still tells the truth. It still helps when help is clean, but it does not become the substitute for someone else's growth. It does not keep stepping in just to avoid feeling helpless, because there will be moments where you are helpless, not worthless, not useless, helpless. You cannot choose for them. You cannot heal for them. You cannot awaken for them. You cannot want it enough to make them ready. You cannot become the missing will inside another person's life. And accepting that is one of the hardest parts of love. Because love wants to reach. Love wants to help. Love wants to protect. Love wants to make the path easier. But mature love also knows when reaching becomes grasping, when helping becomes replacing, when protecting becomes controlling, when making the path easier actually keeps someone from learning how to walk. That is where soft strength has to stand. With a heart that still cares and hands that are no longer gripping the outcome. That image matters. A caring heart with open hands, not closed hands, not controlling hands, not hands wrapped tightly around someone else's life. Open hands, hands that can help without holding hostage, hands that can offer without forcing, hands that can release without hatred, hands that can bless someone else's movement, even when that movement does not go the way you hoped. That is hard, but it is freedom, because the moment you stop gripping, you begin to breathe again, and sometimes, so do they, because some people cannot feel their own strength, while you are always holding them up. Some people cannot hear their own truth, while your voice is always explaining it. Some people cannot develop their own courage, while you keep stepping in front of every fear. Some people cannot meet themselves, while you keep standing between them and the consequence that would have revealed them. Again, not every consequence should be left alone. There are moments where intervention matters. There are moments where protection is necessary. There are moments where love must act. But this episode is about the pattern, the repeated rescue, the endless carrying, the place where your help is no longer creating life. It is only delaying responsibility. When you see that, the question changes. Not, do I care? Of course you care. The question becomes, what does care require now? Does care require my presence, my honesty, my boundary, my silence, my help, my distance, my refusal to participate, my willingness to let the weight land? That question is cleaner because it does not assume love always looks the same. Sometimes love moves close. Sometimes love steps back. Sometimes love speaks. Sometimes love waits. Sometimes love holds. Sometimes love releases. The form changes, but the purpose remains. To support life, to support truth, to support movement, not dependence, not control, not endless repetition. Movement. That is human velocity tense. So maybe today, the invitation is simple. Think of the person or the situation you keep trying to save, not to judge them, not to judge yourself, just to notice. Where have you been carrying? What was not yours? Where have you been calling it love when your body knows it has become exhaustion? Where have you been stepping in before the lesson can land? Where have you been softening consequences that were trying to tell the truth? Where have you been trying to become someone else's readiness? Where has your helping started costing your honesty? And then ask, what is mine to bring here? Not what is mine to control? Not what is mine to fix? Not what is mine to carry forever? What is mine to bring? Maybe it is one honest conversation. Maybe it is a boundary. Maybe it is encouragement. Maybe it is a practical step. Maybe it is silence. Maybe it is distance. Maybe it is letting the consequence speak without rushing in to translate it. Maybe it is trusting that love can remain present without becoming responsible for every outcome. That is not a small thing. That is a grown kind of love. A love that refuses to disappear. A love that refuses to dominate. A love that refuses to make another person helpless just so you can feel needed. A love that says, I will not abandon you, but I will not abandon myself either. That sentence matters. I will not abandon you, but I will not abandon myself either. Because for many people, those two things have felt like opposites. Either I stay with you and lose myself, or I choose myself and abandon you. But soft strength asks for something cleaner. Can I remain loving without self-abandonment? Can I remain boundaried without becoming cold? Can I remain present without becoming responsible for what belongs to you? Can I let you learn without needing your lesson to happen on my timeline? That last one may be the hardest, because sometimes we do not only want people to learn, we want them to learn now. We want them to see it now. We want them to understand now. We want them to change now, partly because we love them, and partly because their delay is uncomfortable for us. And that is where next week begins. Because after we stop trying to save everyone, we have to face another kind of pressure. The pressure to force the outcome, to push life, to rush timing, to pull what is not ready into our idea of when it should arrive. But that is next week's conversation. For today, we stay here with this truth. Helping someone does not mean becoming their life. Loving someone does not mean replacing their responsibility. Seeing clearly does not mean controlling the outcome. And letting people learn does not mean you stopped caring. Sometimes it means you finally trusted love enough to stop carrying what was never yours. Thank you for spending this time with me. If today's conversation found you where you are, share it with someone who may need the reminder. Not because they need another lesson. Maybe they just need permission to stop calling rescue love. If you are enjoying Human Velocity X, subscribe, follow, and join us on Facebook. Not for noise, for the conversation that continues between episodes. And one more thing before we go, we are close to the end of this first season of Human Velocity X. After today, only 2 conversations remain before this first movement closes, but the next season is already being shaped, and without saying too much yet, we are going to begin moving from awareness into direction, from recognizing what moves through us to learning how to navigate it with more clarity. There is something coming, a kind of inner compass, but we will get there when it is time. For now, we stay with the work in front of us. Next week, we continue this movement into another difficult place. Because once you stop trying to save everyone, you may notice something else. You still want the outcome. You still want the timing. You still want the lesson to land when you think it should. You may stop carrying the person, but still try to control the direction. So next time, we are going to talk about the peace of not forcing what is not ready, the strength of releasing the outcome without releasing your integrity, and the quiet discipline of letting life unfold without needing to drag it into your timeline. Until then, remember, every day is awesome. We just have to get through it.